Welcome back to the Toulouse campaign Abridged. Last time we started a war against the Abbasid Caliphate. That went surprisingly well. We also had a little war with our former vassal Verona, and this one went surprisingly poorly. We lost at first, but then we pulled it back with our sheer numbers, finished them off, and now we're starting a bigger war against the Hafsid Sultanate, another of our former vassals. We also last time started moving towards Tabriz, our next target within the Abbasid Caliphate. And here we are, arriving with an army that's actually quite dead. It looks like they're diseased, so they've lost most of their troops recently. But we're going to go for it. Luckily, Tabriz has no army guarding it, so we can go up against just the garrison. Unluckily, that garrison is apparently really strong compared to us, so that looks pretty nasty. We can leave the siege going to try and gain some advantage. However, because we're still diseased, we're actually going to get weaker and weaker over time, so that's not ideal. I'm going to have to bring over another army to support. Luckily, I've got that stack of trash down there that can start moving in. I also secured the nearby area by buying up the Empire of Trebizond, so all those nearby territories are now on our side. This should be nice and safe if we can actually make the capture. Meanwhile, over with the Hafsids, we can just absolutely stomp them to start this war, because I had something like 4 or 5 armies around the place that I could throw into the Hafsid Sultanate from all directions. Here are 3 together at once, easily auto-resolving that garrison to death. But we're going to do the same thing we did with the Abbasids when we first moved in. We're going to leave a stack at every settlement to control it, so our army is going to peter out quite quickly after we go past the first couple of places. But for the first couple of places, we're going to absolutely run everything over with easy auto-resolves. Like right here at Tunis, where our crossbow stack comes up to the walls, and because I also have an army blockading the port, that bounced past nice and easy. So then we moved there as well, and among the crossbows, it was the knights who took most of the casualties, further supporting the theory that crossbows are truly invincible. We can actually keep going because the guys out at sea can then immediately land using the port and move on to attack the next place down as well. We can't just auto-resolve our way in this time, but overall that's a pretty good blitzkrieg to start this war. We'll have another stack available next turn to actually do an auto-resolve at that place we just besieged. The Hafsids need to do something to stop us. Up in Europe, we've got another war to attend to. We're marching across the Alps to punish another of our old vassals. In this case, we need to attack Munich here, but there's a sizable garrison in size, and that garrison contains lots of good units, unlike my army. What I thought I could do here is set up a fort in reinforcement range of the garrison. Figured this would cause the army to sally out and attack me, because the AI can smell it has the advantage, but then the fort might allow us to win. That didn't happen as it turns out, but someone else attacked us in the in-turn sequence, and it is the garrison of Tabriz. So now we have to face this battle. Well, we don't have to face it, we could retreat, but I decided to. Even though we have a lot more units than them, it's still equal numbers thanks to us being half dead, and the enemy units are probably better than ours, as is usually the case. For this fight, it starts off with a bad omen. We're truly in the land of ancient magic, because I spotted some flying rocks in the background. Will they work to the enemy's advantage? Eventually I get bored of looking at the rocks off map, and I do deploy for this battle. We just need to stand here and let the enemy walk at us. But the enemy run at us with cavalry, so I immediately withdraw the crossbows as the enemy approach and try to get them to run into my Vulge walls and shield walls. And this works pretty well. Here on the left, we tank an enemy cav charge onto the Vulge militia, and on the right, some more cav run right into this shield wall unit. That's one of the ones we got through the vassal levy system. Probably roughly the same as our own generic spear units, who knows. On the far right, the enemy cav charge into my cav, but we can immediately surround with more of our own cav. On the left, my brave knights will head out to get around behind the enemy army. We've got plenty of ranged units to deal with back there, so getting the knights into action would be handy. Looks like their initial cav charge has failed. They're falling back even after actually killing quite a few of our own men, particularly among the Vulge militia. But now it's time for us to make a move. We don't want to wait around and wait for them to come back. We want to advance and stop all of the enemy archers shooting at us. On the left, our cav just overwhelmed the surviving enemy cav, and now we can start working towards those archers. On the right, it's a slower affair, but the same idea will apply. We can overwhelm these units and just kill them, even if they're a bit better than things like our mounted sergeants. I'm watching closely here because I want to see if they'll shatter. Since then, I can give these men an order to safely go and do something else. If I don't do that and give the order quickly, the routing unit might come back and attack me while I'm not paying attention, so really enthusiastic to grab the shatter there. Eventually, I leave one unit behind to chase them even while shattering and we move on. In the centre, there's a little fight with the enemy's commander spear unit, and looks like my naphtha throwers are just killing everyone. This is another vassal levied unit. Seems like it's just blowing up everyone in the fight, which I guess is what you expect when you throw grenades into a mass melee. Probably helping us out because our troops are worth less. On the right, our cav are advancing freely now, and now we can get in amongst all these enemy archer units, although a few of them are some kind of elite archer mixed with melee unit, so they're going to be more difficult to take down, and they are doing well against my melee units attacking them from the front. Luckily, we can rely on the fact we're going to have absolute map control very shortly. The enemy's other archers are being chased away and killed by our knights, even if it's a bit slower than you might expect or want. It's going to happen eventually, no Black Death to save the enemy this time. And as for everything they have left, it's time for some good old-fashioned surround and pound, even using some surround and shooting with our mounted archers and crossbowmen. Eventually that sorts everything out, and down they go with their general dying at the same time. With that, we have found victory, with our army now looking even more battered than it was before the fight. We actually didn't get the complete victory that was available here because a couple of enemy units did escape. That means we don't instantly take the town, but it's leaving things in a situation where we can take it next time. Grabbing some replenishment there that probably just about cancels out the attrition we take from being diseased at the start of our turn. At least enough people are alive for us to pop off the auto-resolve, do it without losing any units very nicely, and there we go, Tabriz is taken. This army is now completely wrecked. We effectively can't use it, not only because of its condition, but because to hold Tabriz it needs to stay here to guard the conversions and control public order and stuff. However, I then realised this is a chance to finally use a feature in this mod that's been around for a while but I haven't used so far, and that is this buffer state thing. Some regions can just be turned into their own faction, where it creates actually not a vassal technically, but a puppet state, which is different in Attila's game logic. It's sort of more vassalized to you than a regular vassal. So yes, we've created a new faction here. That means rather than us having to sit there with our dead army to occupy it, the dead army teleports home by the looks of things. It's gone back to Baghdad on its own, and now they might eventually shake their disease and might eventually replenish and come back into the fight. In the meantime, another army is going to start moving out. I've got that stack of mostly levies, and we'll see how they do. Over in the west, well, it's blitzkrieg time again. I brought down yet another army that was in Sardinia, I think. So now we have a 3-stack auto-resolve on this next town. The Hafsid troops that were nearby in the sea have just sailed off somewhere, so they are not going to help, and that's probably the right decision. In we go with another capture, and that's also going to be another army that will be locked down there, so we're down to 2 armies safe to advance. I did a bit of a switcheroo so that one of the advancing armies could be our holy crossbow stack, and they lead the attack down to the next place. There's not much here either though. There's no actual army, and that garrison, while matched with just the crossbows, will be no match once another army shows up, and we do have another army. I could do a siege attack with just the crossbows, but I was kind of looking for a field battle, especially because we have already seen actually that crossbows do very well in siege assaults because of their mixed ranged and melee abilities. Anyway, we're going to auto-resolve that once our second army shows up, suffice to say, and we'll keep looking for something interesting. Meanwhile, our little army moving across from the east has arrived at Barca. Here there's a war between Flanders and the nearby Hafsid and Aibid territories, and with us here we can help out, and every turn that we're here we can levy another unit from Flanders because they are our vassal, and gradually expand that army. As for the Munich situation, since they didn't take the bait earlier, I just put them under siege and left it there. I was hoping they would eventually sally, but I think I sort of forgot about it and they forgot about me, so that siege will just be going on in the background. Here's a little note about what England are up to. That T-posing guy is just sort of awkwardly surfing his shield up and down in front of Montpellier and Toulouse. They're stuck in an AI loop, so they're just moving backwards and forwards every turn, forcing me to watch and probably trying to humiliate me in some way. We get the final vassalization we need down in the east for us to have full military access to the Abbasid Caliphate. So off we go with the army, hanging about waiting for just such an opportunity. We'll go for Isfahan with those guys. I'm going for Ray further north, but in this case I inch forward and see there's actually an army guarding it. And on top of the garrison, this stack of mostly levy spears may not be able to actually achieve anything, so I immediately lost interest in that idea. But we can zoom over and look at our other force out in the middle of Africa, because they can achieve something. First we grab another vassal unit. This is nice, this vassal recruitment system, because in places with no population, places with Black Death, or otherwise places that don't let you recruit, we can still grab units because it all happens totally separately, so we're growing pretty strong over here. We can actually do a siege draw out on that Hafsid settlement, but we're not all that powerful, so I didn't want to bother trying. I just stood there on the border, and we'll come back to that in a sec. Here's that auto-resolve advertised earlier. Our stack of crossbows easily gets into the town with the help of the other army. The annoying thing about this is that the crossbows will now have to waste a turn occupying the town before I can move them again and make the switcheroo. Then they'll move out looking for action, but some action comes to my army sitting on that other Hafsid border because they finally land their forces at sea, bringing over an extra general and engaging us. They've got a number of siege weapons here, but we have a nice diverse army that's focused on cav by the looks of things, by pure chance really. So very appropriate to take down the enemy's ranged attack focused army. I start things off by sending out the crossbow cav to chase down the enemy general. He's just sitting around in the middle of the battlefield, and we can snipe away at him and try and get an early kill. In the meantime, I'm focusing on getting our cav into position to attack the enemy's siege weapons. We can't really sit around in this fight. The enemy general eventually goes after my cav advancing over here towards the right side of our formation. He's just going to get absolutely mauled now because everything can dogpile in on him. I first brought the crossbow cav down to do a point blank range volley into the back. In this case, we're probably going to hit a whole load of our own men, but it doesn't matter, especially because they're vassal levied men, so technically they're someone else's. We hit the fight with a volley, and then I decide to charge to try and get the rout. With that first enemy general is going right downtown. We kill him soon afterwards, meaning we can enjoy the rest of the fight with the enemy already being debuffed, and all of their low quality slingers will now be a nice target for routs. What I was really going for though is just the catapults at the back. We want to make sure they're taken out as soon as possible. If the enemy don't have them anymore, the rest of the fight's pretty simple. We do have the slight weakness of attacking with cav because their smaller unit size and big models makes them relatively more vulnerable to these area of effect based attacks that the siege weapons have. But we're also very fast, so we don't have to take that many of them. The rest of the enemy army isn't doing an amazing job of stopping me getting in here, so we are able to charge in with like 6 units of cav all over the place and get the work done. We engage the crews in melee, and the crews can be very quickly routed as well, especially when it's our knights attacking. More units start turning back to engage, but it's already too late. Now we can start locking things down. We hit those cav on our left, our right from this perspective, and we send cav to attack the enemy's unguarded slingers from behind. They're going to be a nice juicy target. Meanwhile, their melee units are wandering towards my very scant line of melee units. We actually have enough stuff there to win on its own, but soon we'll have even more stuff returning from the other fights. We have in particular this nice unit of armoured pikemen. They can easily bring down the enemy's infantry from the front. Looks like they're on the verge of routing the enemy, that is, this time. It's nice to be not using levied spears for once. So yes, very soon everything chain routes, and because most of the stuff on the field was reinforcements, we do want to maraud around killing everything, and with us having mostly cav, that's nice and easy, so we kill a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't kill everything. Some catapult crew did escape. That's almost good because it actually sets up another potential siege draw-out we could do, but we're not going to do that because of what happens right afterwards. The Abids send an army up from the south, and it also attacks that same force that just fought. This is a case where we could retreat. Since there's nothing to be gained by winning here, all we're doing is defending our allies' territory, but our allies could do it themselves much better if we just weren't here. The only potential upside to winning is that we can go on to attack the Abids' nearby settlement, but we don't have the strength to really do that. All that said, because the balance bar wasn't that bad, I thought let's just take these guys on anyway to have an interesting battle against what looks like a pretty decent and balanced army. We're going to be somewhat hamstrung by our own lack of balance, I suppose. We don't have a decent melee line, so we've got our little block in the middle there. I'm mainly going to be microing this cav all over the place to see if we can overcome the fact we're going to be outnumbered when it comes to the melee fight. Things start well for us though, because the enemy decide to send all of their light cav to charge in to my heavier cav, so I happily countercharge. While you can't take anything for granted in this mod, I presumed we'll have the advantage there in sheer stats, and we'll hack through them, and it's equal numbers. Looks like the enemy try to disengage, and here in particular they disengage through our men, immediately losing most of their troops. With that, this little cav fight's going to go our way. But there is still plenty more cav among the enemy ranks, some on their left who are facing off against my other cav who aren't doing anything, and others on their right who also came to join the fight with our knights, meaning this cav fight keeps going after the first couple of units are down. And this really suits me, because if we can just clear out the enemy's right flank cav and hopefully win all these fights, we'll then be ready for shenanigans once the main fight starts. It's really to our advantage that this is happening before the rest of the enemies got into position. We get the first bit of action on our right soon, as well as they send one unit of cav to attack. Didn't really see it in time, so we just eat that charge. But then I can use my crossbow cav to shoot the enemy cav in the back. The lancers are going to charge vaguely towards the back of the enemy's formation and look for something to do. Some more cav hit our infantry, luckily we're all spears, but annoyingly I wasn't in the shield wall formation when they hit me. Things are looking good on our left. We've got the angles now. We're starting to come in behind and on the flank of the enemy's main line, but they do have some naphtha throwers there, and those naphtha throwers are pretty much the ideal counter to groups of heavy knights like this, so need to be very careful. Their general goes after my lancers, so they're now going to be bogged down and won't get to do a lancer charge. Luckily they're good enough in melee to fight against that enemy general, so that's a fine engagement. I'm eager here to get something in against those naphtha throwers and get some melees going, and we do bog them down for a bit, so we're safe for now. Meanwhile, the melee fight is starting, and it's okay actually, because so much of the enemy's melee infantry was tied up fighting my knights. There's not that much here, and where they're fighting the front of my pike phalanx they won't do all that well. Their ranged units are doing okay though. They're slowly taking out my crossbow cav, who themselves aren't doing very much. And here as well, I've got their naphtha throwers in melee, but their archers are just absolutely gunning my cav down, and boom, we lose some knights in that fight. Overall, the knight attack is looking a bit nasty. I wanted to just give up basically. This is a pretty brave move because we could just die trying to withdraw. Luckily, we've got some armor on these units so they can get away with taking free attacks as they retreat. And with that, we can focus down on attacking the back of the enemy's melee troops instead and ignore all the stuff at the back of their formation here for a little bit. Having the cav in the melee works well at first, but we can't really leave them there since we're going to get hit in the back, not only by more melee units coming in, but by all of the enemy's ranged stuff. So very soon we're out and about again. I was really looking to grab that general kill. We're actually doing pretty well in the fight against him. My crossbows were there ready to shoot at him, but I decided instead to have them run around and chase the enemy's archers away, since those archers are going to do a lot of damage to my cav in the meantime. The swords that followed my cav back to the main melee fight are now rear attacked by those cav after being distracted by my spears. Overall, good stuff, should be the move that kills them, although there are some naphtha throwers hanging about nearby to be very worried about. I'm trying to use my one unit of archers to take down the enemy's crossbow cav because they're gradually sniping me to death. And there, a single volley, the last volley the naphtha throwers had, hits my knights and takes out a full unit right away. They rout. Nasty stuff. The naphtha throwers are pretty good if they work properly. If you just throw them into the melee like I did, well, that doesn't really do all that much. Nice to see. Now we're into a very frustrating phase of the fight where the enemy are mostly just ranged units left over, and we're just not very good at bringing them down. Their crossbow cav in particular can outrun my knights, and we get the guard mode-esque behaviour where the knights catch up for a second, then stop if the crossbow cav move away and the crossbows turn around and kill them. In this fashion, we actually lose pretty much all of our heavy cavalry chasing down not only them but also the regular archers as well. Because with foot archers, if there's more than one unit, then the unit you're not chasing can shoot you and do a lot of damage over time. We do take out the enemy general at last, but by this point we're actually starting to look a little bit thin on the ground, and this battle is by no means won. Both sides have taken extreme damage, but we're still going. There's still a bit of a ranged battle and a bit of a melee battle going on. My archers are really just tanking the enemy in the centre because we don't have the power to win the ranged battle. We're going to send one unit of cav to try and help out, while the rest come to solve the melee over here. These two units of swords with their back to us are a nice juicy target, and we really need to sort this out actually, because the enemy's crossbow cav have gone behind my pike phalanx, probably by accident, while killing some of my other things. But that's a really good position for them to be in, because they can snipe away, and as a result, the other pikes on the left of the screen there are losing their otherwise very easy fight. Luckily, we take out those 2 units of swords at high strength, and now we can start to sort out the crossbow cav. Well, by sort out I mean just run at them, but our lancers are a bit faster than our heavy cav and can better catch up to them. And now that there are 3 units of enemy foot archers and 3 units of cav on our side, we can get them all into melee and chase them around safely. Although the melees aren't that good, you can see I'm again frustratedly checking the stats, and these archers do have decent melee stats. They have the standard like spear sergeant tier melee stats. Still worse than my knights, but with their numbers they fight okay and for a long time. Soon though, we grab the chain route and the battle ends, but only a Pyrrhic victory. We did only lose 1 full unit though, so in the long term that might be fine. And also, it doesn't really matter. As I mentioned, that was a battle of no consequence really. We don't get anything for winning, and if our army had been destroyed we wouldn't have lost anything, other than potential opportunities for entertainment. And you can see I was still interested in going for that siege draw out to the west, but I didn't bother. I went to try and finish off the Abid survivors, but they ran into the desert. I could chase them down and actually finish them off, but I'd take attrition going there, probably end up taking attrition over the end turn as well. And it doesn't matter, so I thought, well, we might as well just not do that. We're going to go back and hang around near our allies. That way we'll be safe, our allies will be somewhat safe, and we can keep replenishing and recruiting units, so we'll build something up over there. The crossbow stack is ready to go, so we move along the coast towards Tripoli and start our next siege. Nothing too special here, but I'm looking for a sally. I want the enemy to come out into the field, as I said. And here there was a better chance than normal, because there is a nearby small army, and the AI may well be tempted to bring them in to join the sally and get something going. But they didn't actually. I'm going to give you the spoiler on that one. Instead, we're going to see something else happen with our wars in the east. First, they came over here to Isfahan and set up this siege. Nothing too special, despite the enemy's low numbers. The balance bar seems to be quite far in their favour, but that's usually what we see. No need to trust it, we can just get some siege equipment and see what happens. At Ray, I had forgotten about seeing the enemy army there in the previous turn, because this was a long time after the previous bit of gameplay. So I happily started advancing, grabbing very quickly a better unit from our vassal levies there to replace our regular levies. We come in and make the siege right there, ready to see what happens. Just before we go on to the next turn, it's time for some shopping. I very rapidly buy a couple of vassals out towards the top right. I think both of the guys I buy were on the traitor list, so now they're back in our fold with a relatively small price actually, which was nice. But yes, they're going unpunished, which is a shame. Some other faction ends up drawing us into a war with the Teutonic Order right up at the very top right of the map. The Teutonic Order are on the list of factions that need to be punished because they're very naughty boys, but on the other hand, they're kind of far away, so it would be really annoying to be at war with them actually. Well, we end up at war with them in spirit. And then here's the thing that happened that I mentioned eventually. The Abbasids come over with an army to relieve Isfahan. I thought we'd be screwed when I first saw it, but apparently that balance bar's pretty good. It's actually better than it was fighting just the city garrison. Perhaps while they have numbers, they're not very good, which could be a miracle. Finally, we've met our match in terms of low quality. Well, I suppose I'll find out. I'll play this battle, and we'll start off with it in the next part.